High in the mountains of the Dominican Republic, there's a set of footprints that has confused hunters for centuries, because they always point the wrong way. Follow them the way they point, and you will walk directly away from whoever made them, and directly toward something else entirely. They call her La Ciguapa, and in the Dominican Republic, she may be the most beautiful, most dangerous woman you'll never actually see coming. She doesn't live in villages or even near them. She lives deep in the Cordillera Central, the wild mountain spine of the island. Most descriptions agree on one thing immediately. She is strikingly, almost supernaturally beautiful, in a way that feels deliberately dangerous. Her skin is often described as copper or blue-toned. Her long hair thick enough to fall past her waist, covering most of her body. In many versions, that hair isn't just long. Her entire body is covered in a fine, soft down, like an animal built to survive the mountains. But the detail that defines her, the one every version of the story agrees on completely, is her feet. Her feet face backward, heels where her toes should point, toes where her heels should be. It means that if you ever find her trail and try to track her by following the direction her feet are pointing, you will always walk the wrong way. Hunters who don't know this rule can spend an entire night walking further from her, convinced they're closing in. She's almost entirely nocturnal, rarely seen by daylight, most active deep in the mountain darkness when the forest is at its quietest, and she doesn't simply hide from travelers. In many tellings, she actively calls out to them, drawing them deeper into the wilderness. Witnesses describe a strange, musical whistling or humming sound carried on the mountain wind. Any bird or insect native to the island, a lone traveler hearing it for the first time, usually assumes it's simply the wind moving strangely through the rocks. But the sound gets closer and stranger, and eventually resolves into something unmistakably like a voice, calling without quite forming words. By the time most men realize they should turn back, they've already followed the sound far deeper into unfamiliar terrain than they intended. That's usually when they see her for the first time, standing perfectly still in a clearing, moonlight catching her impossibly beautiful face. Men, entranced, simply follow her further into the mountains and are never seen again by anyone who knew them. Others describe something closer to a trance, losing hours of memory, waking up disoriented, miles from where they started, unable to explain how. The ones who do remember her clearly often describe a specific, chilling detail. Her eyes never blink, not even once, the entire encounter. There's one more layer of danger most outsiders don't learn about until it's too late. She isn't entirely undefended. Dominican folklore includes a companion figure called the Galipote, shape-shifting sorcerer said to guard La Ciguapa fiercely. The Galipote most often takes the form of a large black dog, patrolling the mountain paths near wherever she's resting. Hunters who get too close, or worse, who try to actually harm her, describe being chased for miles by something that was never quite an ordinary animal. Only one thing is consistently said to be able to catch her cleanly: a special black dog with a single white paw, an actual physical animal. Understand where this legend comes from? You have to look at the deep, layered history of the island itself. Some historians trace her directly to the Taino people, the island's original inhabitants, and their beliefs about spirits of the untouched wild. In that older reading, she represents the mountains themselves refusing to be fully known, fully mapped, fully controlled by anyone. Other versions tie her more directly to the colonial era and to a much harder, more human history hiding underneath the myth. During Spanish colonization, some indigenous and enslaved women fled into these same mountains rather than remain captured. Historians call these escaped communities cimarrones, and the deep mountain forests became both their refuge and their disguise. Over generations, some folklorists believe those very real women were mythologized into something the colonizers couldn't hunt down effectively. A woman whose footprints point the wrong way is, quite literally, a woman who cannot be successfully tracked and captured. Read that way, La Ciguapa isn't simply a monster. She's freedom, encoded directly into the physical geometry of a folktale. Other tellings keep her more purely supernatural, an ancient spirit entirely separate from human history, native to the mountains since long before anyone arrived. Either way, by the 1800s, she had become one of the most recognized figures in Dominican folklore, told in nearly every mountain community. She was especially well known among hunters, charcoal makers, and anyone whose work required long stretches alone in the deep mountain forest. These workers developed specific practical rules for staying safe, treated with the same seriousness as any other wilderness survival knowledge. Rule 1. If you hear whistling or humming with no clear source, you stop moving completely and wait for it to pass on its own. Rule 2. Never try to follow footprints in the deep mountains without first checking carefully which way the toes are actually pointing. Rule 3. If you see a large black dog watching from the tree line, do not approach it and do not run either. Just back away slowly. Rule 4. Never comment out loud on a woman's beauty while alone deep in the mountains, no matter how striking she might seem. One of the most repeated accounts comes from a charcoal maker's camp deep in the Cordillera Central, passed down through several generations of one family. A young worker named Rafael had only recently joined the camp, eager to prove himself capable of working the more remote mountain sections alone. One evening, gathering wood far from camp, he heard a faint, musical humming, drifting down from higher on the mountain slope. Curious rather than cautious, he climbed toward it instead of heading back, telling himself he'd just take a quick look. He found her standing at the edge of a small overlook, moonlight catching her face, more beautiful than anything he'd ever seen in his life. Without thinking, he said so out loud, the exact rule the older workers had warned him about only days earlier. Her head turned toward him slowly, and for the first time he noticed her eyes hadn't blinked once since he'd arrived. She smiled and began walking toward the deeper mountain trail, glancing back once, clearly expecting him to follow. Back at camp, the older workers heard a low growl from somewhere in the darkness and immediately built the fire higher without a word. Rafael didn't return that night, or the next morning, or the morning after that. He was found 4 days later, sitting calmly at the base of a tree miles from camp, unharmed but unable to explain a single hour of it. He quit charcoal work within the month, and reportedly still won't compliment a stranger's appearance out loud, even decades later. Step back from the ghost story, and La Ciguapa starts to look like something layered with more than one kind of warning at once. On the surface, it's a story that keeps people, especially men working alone, cautious and humble deep in genuinely dangerous terrain. The Cordillera Central is remote, disorienting, and genuinely easy to get lost in, curse or no curse involved at all. On a deeper level, many modern readings frame her as an early symbol of nature itself, resisting extraction and control. She can't be tracked using ordinary logic, can't be captured through ordinary force, and punishes exactly the men who assume she can be. And there's a specific reading tied directly to her backward feet that folklorists keep coming back to. A woman whose very body refuses to be read correctly by the men trying to hunt her is, in a sense, permanently one step ahead of them. It's a small physical detail carrying a surprisingly large idea. Some things were never meant to be caught in the first place. There's a specific cultural detail worth adding here. Unlike many similar legends, La Ciguapa is genuinely beloved in Dominican culture, not just feared. She appears in children's books, in poems, even as a kind of unofficial national symbol of the island's wild, untamed interior. That affection sits oddly alongside the danger, and folklorists say that tension is exactly the point of her enduring appeal. She's dangerous specifically to those who try to control or possess her, but otherwise simply belongs to the mountains, undisturbed. Locals sometimes describe her less as a monster and more as the mountain's own conscience, in a beautiful and unmistakable shape. There's also a psychological reading worth sitting with, same way similar isolated forest legends get read elsewhere in the world. Extended isolation in disorienting terrain is well documented to distort perception, memory, and time, curse or no curse involved. La Ciguapa may simply give a beautiful, specific shape to something the isolated human mind was already fully capable of producing alone. That reading doesn't make the old rules feel any less necessary to the people who still live and work at the mountain's edge. A regional variant from the southern Cordillera adds one more detail that changes the entire tone of an encounter completely. In that version, she only appears to men who are truly lost already, not to those confidently walking a known trail. In other words, finding her isn't really the danger. Already being lost in every sense of the word is what invites her closer. Sightings and reports haven't stopped either, even as roads and development slowly creep further up into the Cordillera Central each year. Rural residents living at the true edge of the mountains still report the same core details their grandparents described. A strange humming carried on the wind at night. A beautiful stranger seen only once, never again. And footprints that simply don't make sense. A frequently repeated modern account comes from a hiking guide leading a small group through a remote, less traveled section of the mountains. She says one of her clients wandered slightly off the marked trail, chasing a photo of what he described as an unusually striking view. When she caught up to him moments later, he was standing perfectly still, staring at a point in the trees where she could see absolutely nothing. Took nearly a full minute of calling his name before he blinked and turned around, visibly confused about how much time had passed. Guide has since added a very specific line to her safety briefing that has nothing to do with terrain or weather at all. If you see something unusually beautiful just off the trail, she tells them, you don't step toward it to get a closer look. Whatever she originally was, vengeful spirit, escaped cimarrona, mountain guardian, or all three folded together over centuries, the warning never really changed. So if you're ever hiking deep in the mountains of the Dominican Republic and you hear something musical drifting through the trees, don't follow the sound and check the footprints on the ground first. Because if they're pointing the wrong way, so is your sense of direction.